Shawna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God.
Hey, welcome to Real Sisters, Real Talk. We are so glad that you're here. And right out the gate, just want to be totally honest with you about something. We're having some connection issues. So if there's this weird pause, it's not because there's a riff in relationship between Shawna and Jody. The sisters are not at it. We're just like trying to hear each other and respond real time. So I feel like that needed to be said. Don't you think, Jodes?
I do. And if we talk over each other, that also is because there's this weird delay. And so we're doing our best. And we don't want to not have an episode for this next week. So Here we are.
Here we are doing the best we can do. And, you know, if you want to join the conversation and offer some feedback, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us at Real Sisters Real Talk on Instagram. How else, Jodes?
Same thing on Facebook, or you can reach out to jodyandshawna.com and send us an email that way.
There you go. Hey, I have to kind of catch you up on something that just like a very recent, very sweet, I'm going to say very sweet God moment.
I would love to.
Okay.
Tell me.
So I started a new job this summer. If you're hearing the podcast for the first time, you might not know that, but I'm in this new position doing a new role with the same company. And I went from working in a studio where I was working with a team and we had daily debriefs and, you know, constant feedback and lots of interaction with our listeners as I'm on the radio. And then I went from that to working at home where I'm in the studio by myself at my house. So not a lot of feedback. So I was talking to the Lord about it, and I just, was telling him all the things. I had an excellent plan for what he needed to do. I was like, here's what needs to happen, Lord. I need regular contact with my boss, like a weekly meeting, so I have regular feedback from him. We need to get a communication loop going for me and my listeners, because now I'm on the midday shift for Moody Radio, the national midday shift. So I'm just like, I'm telling him all the stuff that needs to happen. And one day I was just sitting with the Lord. I wasn't doing a quiet time. It happened to be a Saturday. I wasn't doing a quiet time or anything. I just was being with him. So I wasn't reading the Bible, wasn't doing a devotional, wasn't journaling, just enjoying his presence. And he brought it up. And I was like, I'm so glad you brought that up because, I clearly laid out the plan and I don't see a lot of traction here. But anyway, he brought it up with me and he was like, hey, about your need for feedback. And I was like, oh, yeah. What do you got? And I felt like the Lord was saying, why do you need that feedback? And I was like, because I want to be a good steward. I want to do my job well. I have it's ministry, and even if it wasn't, I'd want to do my job well. And so I really want to be a good steward, And he's like, oh, okay. Why? And I said, because I want to know that I'm doing good. I want to know that I'm good. I heard myself say it. I want to know that I'm good. And I was like, oh. And he goes, yeah. Why?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Lord, there's still a part of me that feels like I have to somehow earn my value. That I'm just not fully resting. And in his kindness, he just said, you know what? I've got you and I value you and you're good because I love you. And so it just was it was a corrective moment, but it was also very, very sweet because he just kept going after kind of like what was underneath my request. And so that was on a Saturday morning when he and I kind of had that encounter. And then on Sunday morning, I had the opportunity to share that. And then on Monday, I have a regular appointment with my talent coach, and it had happened on that fall, so 48 hours later. And it was probably the most affirming session that I've had with him ever since I started in radio. And it just felt to me like God was using his voice after this encounter of correction and, hey, I love you and you don't need the feedback. He blessed me through somebody else. He showed his love to me through a human being with a mouth and a connection who could just affirm what was happening. It just, the whole of it, doesn't it just sound like the goodness and the kindness of the Lord?
It does. It does. And I think we need to pay attention to the fact that that's how he works. But if we aren't paying attention, we're going to miss it. We're going to miss the way that he uses other people, the way that he blesses, the way that he encourages. But also, sister, like, he met you so sweetly in that moment. You cried out to him. You said all the things. You told him what he needed to do.
Yeah, I did.
And then he waited, right?
Yeah.
And then he showed up for you and corrected, gave that instruction, and then brought somebody in to really meet that need. I love the way that he loves on us that way. And you know that, like, we look at scripture and we look at all the ways that Jesus loved that way. He showed up for people, the way that he loved in action. He modeled that to us. This summer we did a manuscript study on the First John, and so I got to teach 2 of those lessons, and it was so good. I'm so grateful for that deep dive studying and all of that. But one of them I was teaching on was the last half of First John 3, and it's talking about, like, John is saying, like, this is what love is, because John the disciple wrote First John, a letter, and it was way late in his life, and he says, this is what love is. And he talks about what love is, and it's, providing for the poor and, stepping in and those kind of things. But in verse 18, he says, dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And so it doesn't mean that we don't say it, because we do need to use our words. But what he's saying is, your actions need to back it up. And really, your words are empty if your actions don't back it up.
That is so good.
And so, like, yeah. And so, like, I can say to somebody, you know what? Like, hey, I'll be praying that you find somebody to help you move this weekend. Or I can actually show up and help them move this weekend, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's those are really, like, that's a big thing, but there's so many ways that people have shown up for me and blessed me, and I know it was the love of God that they were expressing, because I felt it just down to my core, and I'm so grateful for those moments. And I think that's what he's talking about here. Like, how do we show up in our actions as well as in what we say? And I think we can kind of reduce that down to sometimes to, oh, I gave $20 to this person who was homeless, or I brought food to a homeless person. Like, I think we can reduce it down to that. And I think it's so much more. And so, I just love that scripture, and kind of want to jump into even maybe telling some times when, like that, Shawna, where God used somebody to show up for you in a way that you really needed them to.
Shoot, I've got one right out the gate. This is so simple. This is so simple, and it was profound in my life. But I was at a different employer, but the place where I was working, I had a morning full of meetings, and throughout the morning, I was spoken over. I was interrupted, and I know that can happen. I mean, that can just happen, right? We need to have tough skin sometimes and just kind of roll with it. But in this particular day, it was impacting my heart, and kind of one of the soft spots for me, a place that I can begin to believe the enemy's lies, is to believe that I don't matter, or that I'm insignificant. And so being spoken over, and then not having anybody like circle back around and say, Shawna, you were going to say something, right? What did it just never happened. Started to kind of feed that part of me that, can feel invisible and insignificant. So after several meetings in the morning where this happened several times, we took a lunch break, and we went to this restaurant, and the gentleman in front of me, as we were all headed to the restaurant door, he wasn't with our group, and he opened up the door and he let me go first. And Joe, it was so profound. In that moment, I had to hold back the tears, because I was like, oh, I'm not invisible. Oh, he sees me. Like, somebody just saw me. And It's cool if it was like a nice guy who holds doors open for people, but that's not what it felt like to me. It felt like the Lord of the universe was speaking a message of love through someone to me.
Which is so loving in the way that he met you through a stranger.
Yeah.
And this stranger walked away and probably I'm sure had no idea the impact that that had on you, but it was God using that person to send a message of your value and how much he
Mhm.
loves you and that he sees you through that person. And I wonder how often we miss opportunities to be used like that by him. I'm thinking about just this very week. We've been reading through the Proverbs, and one
Mhm.
of the Proverbs that I was reading, I had written down that day was about being a good listener. And honestly, I got a phone call from somebody who just needed to talk. They just needed to
Mhm.
tell me what they were going through, and they wanted to give me details of
Mm.
what they were going through. And I was in my office out at the church, and I had like a bunch of stuff going on, and I had to get down to a meeting. And as I was starting to feel anxious, as this person wanted to tell me everything, that verse came back to mind of being a good listener. And I thought, oh, oh, you just want me to listen. Oh, okay. Okay, okay,
Mm.
okay. And I was able to stay present, but it was because God had given me that verse, but that was what that person needed. And so
Mhm.
that was me loving them in action, was to stay present. And sometimes there's and I know people have it with me, like I'm sharing a problem and they're like, "Oh, I just know what you need to do, but I'm going to stay with you, Jody. I'm going to hang with you because
'Cause
you need to work this out."
it's easier to see other people's
Oh,
stuff when you're not in it
for
and you don't know
sure.
all the nuances. You're like, "Clear problem, clear solution. You're welcome." But it's not that easy.
Right? It's a
Yeah.
challenge. So, yeah, just a beautiful way of God loving on you through a man
Mm.
opening a door. So there's
Yeah.
two things. One is we need to see when God is loving on us that way and not dismiss that. And second, when you're feeling prompted by the Holy Spirit to do
Mhm.
something so trivial and simple, do it.
Mhm.
Just do it, because we have no idea we don't need to know the impact it'll have on somebody. Just do
Yeah.
it.
I love that, as you were listening, you probably felt or sensed, and you can correct me if I'm, putting words in your mouth, but like that there was something else you were supposed to be doing or something else you should be doing. And God revealed in, oh, actually the listening, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Did you feel freedom
Okay,
in
I
that?
yes, but I love the way you just said that, because there was freedom in it, but I was still wrestling it
Mm.
out. Like I kept reminding myself, no, this is what God has called me to do in this
Mhm.
moment. But the way you just worded it was like, um, in him showing me that there was actually freedom to stay present in it. And
Mm.
that's beautiful. That's the way we want to work, right?
Yeah.
And
I
respond.
I had a situation just last week where just a really precious friend of mine was having a surgery, and it was the morning of the beginning of my work day when I was reminded that the surgery was that day, and there was a part of me that just wanted to go and be there, but I needed to work, and so I just brought it before the Lord, and I'm like, Lord, I trust you. If I'm supposed to go, I trust that the work that has to happen today will get done. Um, and that if I'm not supposed to go, that, you know, that's okay too. Like, so I just kind of left it up to him, and I sensed that I was supposed to go. And so, I work from home, so I work in yoga pants with no makeup and my hair in a top bun. So I threw myself together and I went. And as I was on my way to the hospital, or to the surgery center, which was probably like, I don't know, maybe 45-minute drive, I ended up getting stuck behind a tractor. I live in Michigan. I live in the country, and I was stuck behind a tractor, and tractors have no vroom vroom. So there I was, just like putzing behind this tractor, probably about 10 cars putzing behind this tractor, just waiting until he decides to pull over and let us all go, or turns or whatever. And I was a little bit frustrated, but I was okay with it. I rolled with it. And then shortly after that, once kind of like the traffic broke up and we got to moving again, ran into construction and got slowed down again. And then I started to get a little bit agitated. But I made it through the construction, and then I got behind another tractor, and I'm like, okay, like that never happens. So then, I'm a God-fearing woman, but even me, I was running out of patience at this point in the game. And I started to talk to the Lord about it, right? And I was like, Lord, I have a lot of work to do. You said go, I'm going, as if he's supposed to clear it up. And I'm telling you, I felt like in that moment, I felt like the Lord said to me, yes, I do know. And when I said yes to you, I knew about both tractors and the construction. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And it was like, oh, I think sometimes too, we forget that the journey was part of the obedience. Like all of it was being obedient to God.
Right. So I think in those kind of situations, it can make us question if we heard him wrong. Oh, was I not supposed to go? Are you trying to stop me? Things aren't easy. Almost like
Ooh,
if we're
good.
doing God's will, the waters will part and it'll be all open and perfect and beautiful, and the angels will sing and it will be lovely. And that's not the way it works. We will still have obstacles and all of those things.
Delays.
And it doesn't mean, yes, delays. It's all okay. And he's in it. And so, okay, God, what are you showing me? How do I stay present? But that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard when you hit your second tractor.
When you hit your second tractor. You
like,
find out you're not as holy as you thought you were. Yeah.
Ooh, what's inside comes out. Blech.
Yeah.
That's not always good, huh? Okay, so I have a kind of just a crazy story.
Yeah.
I've actually had this happen 2 times really specific, but I want to share the first story, and it was quite a few years ago, like 14, probably 15 years ago, when Johnny's dad passed away. We were taking care of him, and we were taking turns, and so we were having to go and spend the night and be present in the house. And so we were taking turns with his Johnny's sister that lives here, and it was our night. And so our kids at that time, Ty wasn't driving yet, and so Ty was like 15 and Lauren was like 12, and so they had to come with us, and I would be up all night long. I didn't sleep. I had a chair right next to Pop's bed, and we'd be tending to him throughout the night, and so you just really didn't sleep. And so but life was still going on. And so we had ministry that night. We were running a 5th and 6th grade ministry at that time. I was the director of it. And so we had been there that night. Then as soon as ministry was done, we came to Johnny's parents' house, and we had to spend the night. And so I had to think way steps ahead. And so I had stuff for the kids for lunch, because they had to have their homework and their backpacks, and they, because we were all sleeping at Opanoma's house. It was just, it was chaos. I felt like I was failing at everything I did. Like you just, I didn't have enough time in the day to do what I needed to do and be who I needed to be for everybody in my world. And so I just felt like I was failing everywhere I went. And so like, it even makes me emotional now. And so I had stuff packed for the kids for lunch, and we had that stuff brought over there, but I hadn't thought all the way through breakfast. And so Ty had to be at school early because he was on the praise team. So we got up at 5:00, which again, I hadn't slept all night. I go to the kitchen of my in-laws' house. I'm not at home. And I open the refrigerator, and it's dark outside, and I'm standing at the refrigerator, and I'm thinking, what am I going to feed my kids for breakfast? Like, I didn't plan this, and I don't have anything. And I was, just that feeling of failing at everything you're doing at the time,
and being so exhausted. Oh my gosh.
And so tired. Tired. I mean, just this had already gone on for probably 10 days. Like, we just hadn't slept, and we were every other night, but it was so exhausting, and also such a joy to be in that season with family. But I was standing at the refrigerator with the door open. That was the only light showing up, and Ty was in the bathroom getting ready, and I was standing there, and I said, Lord, what am I going to feed my kids for breakfast? And all of a sudden I hear Jody, and I look out the front window, which I was facing the front window of their home, my in-laws' home. And there stood 2 of my friends at 5 a.m. with a box of donuts. And I was floored. I was like, what? So I walked outside and they handed me the donuts and off they went. And I just thought, God, you knew what I needed before I knew that I needed it.
Right.
And you told these friends before I even knew what I needed
Right.
that they needed to go get some donuts and show up for me that morning. And so they were going to an exercise class. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm so
Uh,
emotional. But they were going to an exercise class. And so they stopped that early in the morning, not knowing if I would even be awake because they didn't know
right.
Ty had to be. It's like all the things. And I
Yeah.
happened to be standing at the refrigerator with that light shining on me at that moment. And I literally out loud said to God, Lord, I don't know what to feed my kids this morning. Like, and it wasn't that I just didn't have breakfast food and I was feeling so
Yeah.
lost in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did he show up for our physical need, our kids got donuts for breakfast that morning, which they didn't usually get, but he also showed me in that moment that I didn't have to be enough because he was.
Mm-hmm.
And it it met me in such a emotional, spiritual, and physical way
Yeah.
because these people showed up for me in a time when I needed it so desperately. And I don't think there's any way they could have known that
And here's the
except for
thing,
God.
except for God. But here's the other thing. They had the privilege of being the ones who showed up with the donuts. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's blessing for it in you, like hands down, 100%. But there was blessing in it for them too.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I think of the times when that's a real physical like action that they took. I also think there's times when we feel led to pray for somebody
Mm-hmm.
and we stop what we're doing and we pray. You might even feel led to fast for somebody like on their behalf. We had a group of women who did that for a friend when she was in real need, and a group of us fasted and prayed for her. What a privilege to stand in the gap for
Mm-hmm.
someone when they are so needing God's people to do that.
It's so
So it
good.
is a privilege to be on that end, and what a privilege and humbling experience to be on the other end when you have a need met so incredibly.
The conversation, Joe's about like just demonstrating love. And you kind of kicked off this whole thing by saying, that God shows his love. He doesn't just tell us that he loves us, but he has shown us his love. And Jesus modeled actively loving people. It makes me think of Romans 5:8 says, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And I think so much of the emphasis, a lot of times we hear that verse, and the emphasis is on while you were still screwing up, while you were still hurting his heart, he was loving you. But it also, I just think that word demonstrates just kind of jumps off the page with the conversation that we're having right now, in the fact that um, it's love in action. We have the opportunity to be like him when we're love in action. And I think a lot of times we think, well, Jesus laid down his life. I don't know that I'll ever have an opportunity to lay down my life for somebody else. And I know somebody who donated a kidney to an acquaintance. To be honest, it wasn't even somebody they were close with, but somebody in deep need of a kidney. So yeah, there are huge things like that we can do. But come on, we're talking about donuts. We're talking about saying a prayer.
Right.
We're talking about holding a door. And these are the moments that come to mind for us when we think about how people showed up. Like that says to me, oh, I can do this. I can be a part of this.
Yeah. Even that just sometimes that action might even be just listening. I think of
Mm-hmm.
when we have a grief share ministry that we run at our church. And one of the things that I constantly encourage people when someone has suffered loss is just show up and listen. Just listen, because they just need to process, and they don't need advice. They typically don't need you to tell them what they ought to do.
Mm-hmm.
They just probably need a listening ear. And so even that is love in action, right? That's putting feet to that love. And so
Yeah.
yeah, what a great way to encourage, bless, love, demonstrate God's love
Mm-hmm.
for God's people.
Well, this has been great. I feel like we could go on and on telling the stories about impact, but it's a good place to kind of wrap up and just say, this is who we're called to be. We're ambassadors of the good news, of the love message of Jesus, and we get to be a part of it. And it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. It doesn't even have to cost you a whole bunch of time necessarily, but it really is something sweet to be a part of.
Absolutely. And so, honestly, to those of you who have been the hands and feet of Jesus for Shawna and I, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you've done it for someone else, thank you, because it really does matter and have an impact. And remember this week as you walk out what it means to live for God, to put love in action. Remember that we serve a real God and He really loves you.